Meeting of Monday, March 25th. After our evening session, welcome folks that are here. Does staff have any additions to the agenda?
None, Your Worship.
Council, any additions? Any disclosure of interest by councillors? Okay, hearing none. We have no statutory public hearings this evening. We do have a variance hearing, and so I will start by reading the procedure for development variance hearings. I'd like to open up the hearing for VP 494. Following the reading of the motion, I will request the Director of Development Services to explain the development. I will then ask 3 times for submissions from the gallery, giving the opportunity for the applicant and public to speak. Council will also have the opportunity to ask questions. Once this is complete, I will close the hearing and Council will vote on the motion. We have a proposed motion on the screen. Could I have a mover and seconder to get it? So moved. Thank you. Councillor Lyson, second. Councillor Flynn. Could I ask the administrator to read the motion, please?
Moved by Councillor Lyson, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that VP 494 be authorized for issuance for Lot 1, Plan KAP 79341 to vary subdivision and development servicing bylaw number 4163 as follows. Waive the requirement for full frontage upgrades along the western portion of 51st Street Northeast, along the hooked portion of the subject property, and waive the requirement to install street lighting along the frontage of the subject property.
Thank you. I'll ask the Director of Development Services to explain the proposal.
Thank you, Worship. The property is located at 1190 51st Street Northeast. It's a hooked property, meaning it's adjoined across 51st Street. And 2 years ago, a development permit was approved by City Council for the new Eagle Homes sales office on the eastern portion of the property. That lot was taken out of the ALR and the OCP was changed to highway commercial and the property was rezoned to C3. And at the building permit stage, well, I should mention too, with that development permit, a variance was granted to not have to construct a sidewalk along this frontage. But the remainder of the frontage still has to be upgraded to the local urban standard. There was no variance request to reduce that standard. And then at the building permit stage, I think it was a bit of a surprise, but the applicant was informed that they had to upgrade this frontage as well on the western lot. And so the applicants bonded 125% for all the works and services required, less the variances, in order to get their building permit, and that was issued. The building is now pretty much complete, and so this is an after development variance request, and the variance request is to not have to upgrade this frontage to the RD2 urban standard, and instead upgrade it to an RD7 rural standard, and to reduce the number of streetlights. The initial application for this was no streetlights. However, I understand that the applicant who is here today has been talking with our city engineering department and has come to an agreement with us that 3 streetlights would be workable along these frontages.
Great, thank you very much. To the applicant is here, Mr. Lawson. Would you like to open the hearing for us, please?
Thanks, Your Worship. Blake Lawson from Lawson Engineering. So just further to what Mr. Pearson was just saying, I spoke with city staff and my client to talk about the motion or the variance to waive all the streetlights along 51st Street, and my clients were open to amending that to get it to reduce down to 3 streetlights. So what that'll do is it'll limit all the streetlights to the southern part of the parcel. All 3 will be starting from the south end of 51st Street, and then they'll end kind of at the intersection to the highway there. And then the street lights won't extend any further past the intersection. thought there is just really the road past that to the north there on the 51st Street frontage is only accesses a couple of residential properties back there, and it won't be heavily used for traffic. So that's considerations my clients made, and if council's willing to amend that motion, then they'd be in support of that.
Thank you. So council, what we'll do is we'll finish the hearing, and then once we close the hearing, if there's any amendments that they wish, we will entertain them. Is there any questions for Mr. Lawson from councillors? Okay, I see no questions at this time. Thank you very much. I'll ask if there's anyone in the gallery who would like to speak to this variance. Please come forward.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. My name is Frank Ambler. I own 1140 50th Street Northeast, right adjacent to this property, Countryside Manufactured Homes. I support keeping the city of Salmon Arm servicing requirements as they are and oppose their request for a variance on both parcels. In the 2 years that it has taken Eagle to finish their head office sales center, they have not maintained the standards that they claimed they would to get the property out of the ALR. Firstly, all of the crimson maple trees as well as the grass and underground irrigation that I planted was all removed. This is a huge change from what is there now. Fair enough, it's their property. Secondly, most of the trees and other greenery they planted around the fence as a requirement to get it out of the ALR, that has died because they took them so long to get anything done. Thirdly, they have already had to do a lot less on their land than what I had to do. Their sewer system was placed in the water table, essentially, and is covered by their show homes. I have not seen any storm retention, although Blake says that there is. The water table is the height it is in the ditch, and that's pretty much common for that area. Comparatively speaking, we planted all the area with grass and sunburst maples, complete with irrigation. This is one of the main entrances to Salmon Arm, where both highways meet. Previous to Eagle building on their property, we kept that section of the west side of 51st Street maintained, irrigated, everything. When we built our sales center, we did everything that was required. We have a huge stormwater retention system. Because of the naturally high groundwater, we have $35,000 sewer system there, sewer treatment system. It's an environmentally sensitive drainage area. We did everything that was asked. No complaints. On 10th Street Northeast, we built all the curbs and gutters, storm drains, sidewalks, underground electrical, and street lights. Plus, we built the basis for the mailboxes. Then we finished the area with grass that we irrigated at our cost and maintained at our cost. I realize the snow has just melted and neither of us look that good over there right now, but Salmon Arm is amazing and we hope to keep it that way. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I'll just see if there's any questions. Is it possible to just focus a little closer on that map? Great, that's super. Do we have any questions for Mr. Ambler from council? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation at this time. We'll see if there's any other questions. Is there any other presentations from anyone in the gallery? I'll ask for a second time. I'll ask for a third time if there's any other presentations. Before I close the hearing, I'll open it up to questions from council for either presenters or for staff. Councillor Cannon.
Thank you. I guess this question is for Mr. Ambler. I'm just trying to figure out on the map where your site is there.
See the little hooked property there? I'm everything south of there.
Okay, so,
If you go to the left, that would be a different property, but.
so you're everything to this side.
That must have been taken before I had show homes in there, by the looks of it.
Okay, and you developed that with no variances?
Lots. Very
Yeah, like you did all the servicing.
Sidewalk on the south end.
Just speak into the microphone, then we'll all be able to hear you, thanks.
Sorry, Al.
No, that's
Sorry,
great,
Your
no
Worship.
trouble.
See on the south side, all the sidewalk, that was me. We got storm drain there. We got underground for the street lights, electrical, and we put the street lights in. Should be more current Google pictures than that. Yeah, there's my sidewalk. Street lights. Fencing, there's my sand mound. That's a $35,000 septic system. We irrigate all the grass outside that fenced area. It was fenced before we purchased the property. It's a beautiful area. Before we started, it was just dumped dirt piles. So it's still a work in progress.
Councillor Canada, do you have any follow-up questions to that?
No, that's good,
Okay,
thanks.
thank you very much.
Thanks.
Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Frank. Debbie or Councillor Cannon, and got some of my question answered, but can I ask staff, if we go back to that photo that you just showed. Okay, no, the other one. Okay, yeah. So, just so I'm clear on what has been presented, clearly we made no variances along this frontage for sidewalk or streetlights, is that correct?
Your Worship, I remember this, it was around 2008, and no variance was granted along this frontage. So there are street lights to our urban standard, there's 2 of them,
Right,
and then the sidewalk up to here.
okay, so,
And then a variance was granted for the remainder of the frontage.
okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. So if you go to the next picture, I think it was, because that isn't as busy a street as the one where the sidewalk was, council of the day did grant a variance for that frontage, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then I'm glad you have a septic system like you said, but that's not really our issue in this site. This is all septic, and that's IHA that monitors that, is that correct?
That's correct. There's no city septic system out to this area, so on-site system.
Okay, thank you. And then this seems to show the trees. Mr. Ambler, did you plant all those trees along that?
Actually, on the 10th, I didn't. On the 10th Street, I didn't. They were there before,
Right.
but all along the 51st, including where the Eagle property was.
Okay.
Originally, I had a handshake deal that would be mine. But
Oh, okay. So, and is that where you're saying the trees have all died, is on the piece,
no. Their trees died on their right hand, on the east
on the
side.
bigger property?
And they're not all dead, but
But,
more than half.
and that's the ones that were supposed to be a barrier with the ALC?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I hope for more. I have high hopes. I can't believe they will keep
Okay,
it that way.
so, and for staff, thank you. I think that's all I have for you. To staff, when this was approved for Eagle Homes, I believe, do we know how much they had to spend on the wastewater, sewage, septic?
No, I think if anyone would know that, it'd be Mr. Lawson, if he was involved in that part of it.
But they've obviously had to provide up to IHA standards?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks. I may have some
Thanks,
more
Councillor
questions for
Flynn.
staff. Thank
Yep.
you.
Councillor Lindgren?
Thanks. So I'm just looking at this picture and where the sidewalk stops going on to 51st Street Northeast. So that was originally a variance that said that didn't have to be done. Was that street a through street at the time?
Yes, Your Worship, the Ministry of Transportation constructed this road as part of the upgrades to the Trans-Canada Highway and 97 intersection area. So the MOT built this frontage road without any curb, gutter, or sidewalk.
That was good of them. Okay, that's it for now.
Councillor Wallace Richmond?
Thanks, Your Worship, through you to staff. Will this proponent be building any sidewalk, or am I missing something?
The variance granted by council in 2017 was to waive the requirement to build a sidewalk along this frontage.
Right.
And this frontage has to be upgraded to the urban standard, less the sidewalk.
I see. And this request is dealing with across the street.
Yes, it's the request is to not have to upgrade this frontage to the urban standard, but essentially keep it as is to the RD7 standard, which is rural.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon?
So I guess a question for staff. So is there landscaping that's required?
Director of Development Services?
A landscaping plan was approved for this development permit. And because I didn't think that would be part of the discussion tonight, I don't have it here. It's on site and it's not relevant to this.
I was just curious. It was just a question. Thanks.
Thank you. Do council have questions for the applicant or Mr. Ambler or staff before I close the hearing? Councillor Flynn?
So we've got basically two issues. One is variance of the road standard to leave it at rural on the hooked piece. And then where would the 3 lights, if we allow it to go to 3, because what was the original proposal? I think it was 5.
5.
So where would you see the 3 lights going?
What's being proposed is 3 lights starting here and ending about here.
So, and would those lights be enough to light across 51st to the hooked piece?
They'd be sufficient light to light the roadway.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon?
I just had one more question.
Yes,
So
that's fine. Now's your opportunity.
those 3 that we just discussed for lights, were the other 2, would they be on the opposite side or they were all on the same side?
They were all along here, starting here and going to here.
Okay. And none were required on the hook piece on the other side?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lindgren?
I'm just wondering, I regret that I haven't driven by this property to have a better look at it, so I'm just wondering what's on the hook piece. In this picture, I'm assuming this is an old Google shot. Oh. So if there is that
Just
the
looking across from the
west
hooked
side of the
piece,
road?
yes.
Yeah,
This is the frontage of the hook piece,
okay.
and this is the bigger frontage.
So has Eagle Homes developed what's on the east side of this, where that white truck is? Is that their development?
That's their property. It's part of this property,
Yeah,
but there's no new development on this property.
okay, there's no buildings been built there, or there's not, that's not where the show home is, or their office, or something?
I believe there's something, I just
parking lot?
might show up in a picture. No, I don't have the answer to that right now. I drove by it too several times and I don't remember what's on there.
Okay, any other questions, Councillor Lindgren?
That's good for now, thanks.
Could we just go to the map there? So, I'm not sure if other councillors have questions. I just want to check with the Director of Development Services. So, on Mr. Ambler's property, the one side where the sidewalk is and the street lighting, that's to the urban standard. And then along 51st, is that to the RD7 standard?
I'll defer that one to Rob.
Director of Engineering Public Works?
Your worship, it's pretty much to the, it's got ditch and paved roadway. So that's really the urban or rural standard.
Okay, that's what I thought. So what this request is about is continue with the RD7 standard. Because it doesn't really make sense to put a sidewalk in along there when you don't have a sidewalk on the other piece. Okay? Any other questions from council? Councillor Cannon.
Sorry, just one more question. So where the hand is right now, that's where Mr. Ambler accesses his? No?
Right there.
Yeah, right there. And then it looks like the hooked piece has a black fencing around it?
Correct.
So then did they access the same way to get there as where that hand was?
Just hang on. There is a photo. This is a question to staff. Director of Development Services, would you just show the photo that shows the access there?
Sure.
They've got access here down to there.
Okay. Okay, the other one.
Right there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right.
It's an old.
Last opportunity, council. I will give anyone in the gallery an opportunity if they'd like to say anything else. Now will be your chance. Come on up.
I'd answer any questions because I do know what it's like, but
No, I understand. Council, do you have any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I will declare this variance hearing closed. And we'll go back to the motion. That's the motion that was amended from the planning committee meeting. There's the original motion. I'll open it up for discussion by council. Councillor Flynn.
Are we splitting the variance, or are we going to make an amendment to the second piece if we want?
I would entertain any amendment that you would wish. I'll just check with the administrator and see, would it be easier to split those two, administrator?
I think an amendment would be simpler, your worship.
Okay, all right.
Okay. And if we could go down to what the amended motion was, maybe that'll help me. So the amended motion at planning, just so I'm clear, was to do all 5 streetlights and not reduce the street lighting requirement. Is that correct?
So I think if you want to amend the motion similarly to planning, but include 3 streetlights instead of 5, you would make this amendment to number 1, and to number 2, instead of deleting the whole section, you would amend it to include 3 streetlights.
Okay. I will think about that.
Okay. Councillor Lindgren?
Can I just get somebody to clarify again, Mr. Ambler's property along 51st, was that upgraded to the RD7 standard? The same standard that this developer is asking for?
Director of Development Services, actually I think it's Director of Engineering and Public Works answered that question previous.
Which frontage? That
Is that up to the RD7 standard, is the question.
I really can't remember. It was 2008. I can't remember the file on that. I believe it would have been requested at that time because the RD2 standard was done on the front. So the urban standard was done on the front of the property.
Okay, and RD7 along
I would suspect that
west
would be
corner. Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
Thanks, your worship. Will the RD7 standard require some expenses be incurred by the applicant?
Director of Development Services?
We have a bond for that.
Okay. So it's not as if nothing will happen.
That's right.
Right.
Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Worship. I will make the amendment to not waive the street lighting requirement, but request 3 streetlights as reviewed by staff with the applicant. I don't know if I need to be more specific than that.
I think that's sufficient. Seconded by Councillor Cannon.
So, as I now understand it, and I just want to make sure I'm clear before I speak to the motion, the large piece will still be to the RD, not the rural.
Just let the counselor speak. The staff can answer his question.
So that will be done to the higher standard, and the smaller lot will be done to the same standard that it looks like the other piece was done. Is that correct?
Your worship, that's correct.
But with no sidewalk, clearly.
Correct, that was varied.
So the only thing that's varied on the big piece is no sidewalk, but everything else is to urban standards.
That's correct.
And the small piece is being asked to be to rural standard with some improvement, but not to the same level, but similar to what has happened on the rest of 51st.
That's a very good summary.
Okay. So I'm going to speak to this in two parts. One is I see no reason to build a sidewalk on either side of 51st in this location. So I think that big piece has been upgraded to a urban standard, and that wasn't varied. The smaller piece is going to be the same standard that exists on the rest of 51st. And again, it would be a sidewalk in the middle of nowhere, and I understand why the sidewalk was needed on the other side, because that's a much busier pedestrian street. So I am in favor of that variance, and honestly, I don't know why we need 2 more streetlights further down a rural road, so I am supportive of the 3 streetlights as well.
Thank you. So we're just speaking to the variance now, which is the light piece, but that's okay. I think it was helpful for everyone. Does anyone else want to speak to the variance, which is the piece of the lighting? Okay, I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? Councillor Lindgren opposed. The amendment passes. Now the motion as amended. Any discussion on the motion as amended? This is your last chance to speak. Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. While I'm sympathetic to Mr. Ambler and his sidewalk, thank you for building that sidewalk. I also know that the applicant of this variance will have some upgrading to do, and will have to add 3 street lights. I understand the competitive nature of your business, but I have to be mindful of the reality that's in front of me right at this moment. So given the information in the staff report and the recommendation and the work done today, I'm happy to vote in favor of the variance.
Any other speakers? All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you to the presenters. Question and answer period. Does anyone in the audience have a question that they would like us to try to answer? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion for adjournment.
Moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Cannon, that the regular council meeting of March 25th, 2019 be adjourned.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think it was a very...
Yeah.
Reduce the requirement construction frontage along the western portion of 51st as per this.
Yeah.
So this plus 3 streetlights. Or not this in its entirety, was it just to RD7?
It's this, but only 3 streetlights, because without varying the streetlights, it would have been more.
I'll check the washing before
Thank you, thanks. Have a good night. Okay, so the staff, sorry, so this piece was number 1 and number 2 was 3 streetlights.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or it could all be rolled into one. That's what I would do.
with a reduction to 3 streetlights. Okay.